Welcome, everyone, to the Eugene City Council May 26th City Council meeting. Welcome to everyone here and at home. The first thing on our agenda, and I should say that Councilor Evans is sick at home, Councilor Pryor is out of town, and I believe Councilor Zelenka is joining us on the phone. So
I'm here, Mayor.
Great, thank you so much. So the first item up this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Before we open up the meeting, tonight's meeting, by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and honor Memorial Day, I'd like to read an excerpt from President Obama's proclamation. In solemn reflection, we gather in small towns and big cities, on battlefields and in cemeteries, and at sacred places where blood has been shed for freedom's cause throughout our country and around the world, to remember the unbroken chain of patriots who won independence, saved our union, defeated fascism, and protected the nation we love from emerging threats in a changing world. Today, their legacy is carried forward by a new generation of servicemen and women and all who strive to shape a more perfect America, and their enormous sacrifices continue to make our opportunity possible. We owe all those who sacrifice in our name a tremendous debt, including our nation's mothers and fathers who have given their daughters and sons to America, spouses and partners who shoulder the weight of unthinkable loss, and courageous children in whom the legacies of their parents live on. As a nation, we must uphold our obligation to those Gold Star families. We have pledged to them that they will never walk alone, that their country will be there for them always, and we must work every day to make good on that promise. Our nation will never forget the valor and distinction of the women and men who defend freedom, justice, and peace. Today, we rededicate ourselves to commitments equal to the caliber of those who have rendered the highest service, to support our troops with the resources they need to do their jobs, to never stop searching for those who have gone missing or are prisoners of war, to ensure all our veterans have access to the care and benefits they have earned and deserve, and to continue our constant work of building a nation worthy of the heroes we honor today. And now it is my pleasure to introduce, maybe you could put a finger, Luis Martinez Santiago, yes, Andrea De Leon, yes, Ervenia Lopez Toledo, along with Fernell Lopez, representing the GANAS program at Kelly Middle School. GANAS is an after-school tutoring, mentoring program that connects university Latino students to Kelly Middle School Latino students every Monday and Wednesday. This program helps students develop bicultural leadership skills and to break down barriers to higher education. Students receive help with their homework from Spanish-speaking mentors, participate in leadership discussions, and give presentations around in the community. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Please rise, everyone, and join them as they lead the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very much.
Lacey, I'll leave everything for you. That's good. Awesome.
We appreciate you being here. The next item on our agenda this evening is the public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues, except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium or to the table, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward, if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. And I don't think I actually tapped it in, so they don't tapped it in. So we have 9 folks signed up to speak. The first one up is Martin Champion, followed by Susie Loopy. Martin?
I just like to, I live in
Just introduce yourself.
My name is Martin Champion. I live in Councilor Surratt's ward. I think. No, I do. I just want to. I haven't spoken in front of council in the only one of you that was up here last time I did was Councilor Taylor.
Speak up a little bit. We can't.
The only one of you that was up here last time I spoke was Councilor Taylor. I'm glad she's still here. But I'd just like to oppose the ban on smoking in public parks. If that's, I'm a little confused about what the proposal actually is, but if that is, I'm against it. I think it'd be one more thing that would be I really am against park exclusions. I've seen people excluded from parks. There's no due process before that, and I'm really opposed to anything in which people are given a punishment without due process first. And a lot of the people that get excluded from parks are very poor, and it's hard for them to find the place where you go. I bet none of you know where you go, but you go to some building somewhere in town to, after the fact, to go to a hearing to try to get your park exclusion removed. And it's very difficult. You're really poor. You may not be allowed on bus. I've helped somebody very disabled with mental health issues find her way to go and appeal a park exclusion after the fact. And this person, it was impossible. Anyway, that particular person smokes.
Excuse me.
And I'm really opposed to any more excuses for excluding people from parks. I don't think any affluent person sitting and watching Shakespeare in the park or anything like that would get an exclusion for smoking or drinking in a park. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Susie Loopy is next, followed by Valkyrie. Okay.
Making a medical person concerned.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with I'm very sensitive to perfumes and things of that.
Oh, that's common. Okay. My name is Susie Loopy, and I'm in George Brand's ward. Thank you for serving. And I normally have something written out, but I chatted a little bit today, so I'm not that organized. One of the things that I'm proud to say is that I'm sitting with a group of people over there that are part of Occupy Medical. And over the last 3 years plus, they have been serving with me in some capacity as we are in the park giving the healthcare, mental health, and medical help to people for free in the public healthcare for all model. And one of the reasons why they continue to serve, no matter what the weather and what the conditions that we serve in, we were in a couple of little pop-up tents with this big bus that is quite chilly in the winter and very, very hot in the summer. But they keep coming back week after week to help with this cause because we see these beautiful things happen for the people that we serve. We have every month someone come to us and say, I was able to kick my addictions because of the help that you lent me. And every week we have someone that comes by and says, I just want to thank you for helping me heal and helping me find guidance with my chronic condition. And that feels so good down deep inside of us. So that's one of the reasons why we keep having people show up over and over and over again, even though our fingers get really cold from the snow and we have to put our hands in our armpits before we listen to someone's pulse. Even though it gets so hot that we're sweating, we have to apologize to people. I'm so sorry, but I need to get your blood pressure here, and I really apologize. It's just so hot right now. And yet, despite all of the adversity that we run into, sometimes some of the people that are supposed to help us serve in the public sector are not as helpful as we'd like, but we still continue despite the adversity. And we need help. We need to have public secured sharps containers so that we can continue to help people with addiction and we can continue to help people with diabetes. It would really, really help us if you could support just that little box in the parks, just like we have at Washington Jefferson Park, so people can safely dispose of their needles. And keep in mind, hepatitis is killing more people in America right now than we have people dying of HIV. And we need to get help with disease control. Your help would assist us. Thank you.
Thank you. Allie Valkyrie is next, followed by Peter, Greta, Shelly.
Hi there, long time no see. Allie Valkyrie, former resident of Wards 1 and 7, currently standing in solidarity with Ward 9. And I must say that I never imagined the day when I'd be driving 112 miles to agree with Councillor Clark, but that's why I'm here. There's a smoking ban proposed under the guise of public health, in quotes. Personally, I think the fact that there are several thousand people without adequate sanitary facilities is much more of a public health threat than secondhand smoke, but I'm going to leave that as an aside for now. While I do believe that some people who support this ban are truly concerned about public health, personally, I think the car exhaust and LTD bus exhaust downpour is much more affecting to my lungs than secondhand smoke. And I don't think this is nearly as much about public health as it is about pushing certain people out of downtown. Yes, smoking's a health issue. Captain Obvious agrees. Poverty is a health issue too, and poor and working class people smoke for very different reasons than why affluent people smoke. There's a reason why over the past 30 years smoking rates have plummeted for every group except the poor. If chemical addiction is the only thing keeping you smoking, quitting makes sense, and pushing people to quit makes sense. But poor people smoke as a coping strategy. When you're hungry, a cigarette makes the hunger go away. When you're stressed, a cigarette chills you out. When you're exhausted, a cigarette gives you an extra hour or so worth of energy. And one can't underestimate the importance of the social bonds that are formed on the street around smoking. I can tell you, as someone who worked with this population for years, there was one thing I was never without, and that was a pack of cigarettes, because I could keep a panic attack from turning into a cahoots crisis by simply giving someone a little bit of tobacco. Works every time. Poor and homeless people smoke because they don't have access to things like regular meals, warm places to sleep, and anti-anxiety medication. These are realities that are hard to understand from a middle-class standpoint, but I can't stress how significant of an issue this is among the homeless. Banning smoking in parks excludes an already vulnerable population that has nowhere else to go, and it does nothing for their health. They're not going to quit smoking because you tell them they can't in the parks. It only marginalizes them further, pushes them back in the shadows, and does so with a really patronizing big brother, we know what's best for you attitude. If you know what's best for them, give them housing. It's not the job of the government to lecture people on what is healthy while you're allowing them to die in the streets at the exact same time. If you want to cut down on smoking, start by focusing on poverty. It's much easier to quit smoking if you're not living in survival mode. I can tell you this as a former street kid who was able to quit once I had shelter. It's much easier to quit when your basic needs are met. Prohibiting marginalized people whose basic needs are not met from smoking in public is unnecessarily punitive and really does very little for public health overall. It only further criminalizes their existence, forces them from public space, and increases the already a ridiculous amount of animosity in this community. Please reconsider. Thank you.
Peter, Greta, Shelly. Nope, we don't do that. Sorry. Thank you. Peter, Greta, Shelly's next, followed by Tara Williams.
Hey there. Hey there, my name's Peter Greta, and I live nomadically, mostly in Eugene, and I think the smoking ban would probably just make the people that smoke in the parks now and who haven't got anywhere else to go like smoke in the middle of the sidewalk instead. And I know a lot of people get bothered downtown by the sidewalks already being obstructed, so that's one more reason not to do that. I also have a proposal, an idea that I'm putting out there. So if my buddy Jesse Sponberg's elected to be mayor of Portland next year, he's going to have, among many other things, committees formed like that citizens are encouraged to join, which will be revising every little part of the city code. All of it will be up for possible revision, and I think that this is the revision of existing city code is generally overlooked. Like most of it just sits there quite stagnant. So that should be a thing. I also I've been into organizing work parties in people's backyard gardens over the past year and a half. I've learned a little bit about the dynamics of gardening, and I noticed you have community gardens here in Eugene, and like most other cities, the plots are all individualized, right? So, it makes sense that people wouldn't really pay for a plot if it wasn't individualized. But I think if you can afford it and it wouldn't be very expensive, there could be another option, which would be like community gardens that operate the way Food for Lane County operates Grassroots Garden, where it's all managed communally instead of individual plots, and they source volunteers from all over the place. And I think there should be a place like that in every community. And why wait for nonprofits to create it? The city could, create it and not charge anybody to use the plots, but we could pretty much build the whole thing ourselves and do blacksmithing there and create all the tools. The people of this city, there's a lot of really bored and idealistic people around here, I've noticed, and they'll just build the whole thing for you. You just got to set aside the land for it. And as far as I'm talking about communal infrastructure here. As far as communal shelter infrastructure, well, it ought to be set aside by the city for people that really need it. But as for the rest of us, we'll take care of it ourselves, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Tara Williams is next, followed by Lorraine Hunt.
Good evening, Tara Williams, longtime resident in George Brown's ward. It's a broken record to discuss the possible public smoking ban initiative, both downtown and in the parks. It sounds great on the surface. We're all completely aware of the adverse health effects that cigarettes have and their odor. I, too, am very familiar with that as a former smoker. But underneath the veneer of this pro-health campaign is an insidious form of classism, one that will disproportionately target the homeless community who are already at the mercy of our local police force. Meanwhile, those with money can find refuge in many of our bars and establishments, possibly even in the comfort of their own homes and vehicles. As stated earlier, for the people on the streets, cigarettes are an appetite suppressant. Homeless people smoke because they self-medicate for hunger. Many of them even use them as a source of short-term stress relief. Anything as a respite from the reality that they're in. Compared to all the health risks that they face, from hypothermia to malnutrition to being prey to assault, tobacco should be the least of our concern, and giving the authorities another tool to oppress those who experience enough harassment, who are time and time again cited and arrested for outrageous policies, is waste of taxpayer money and outright shameful. I like to think that if we truly cared about our community, we would spend our time and our money on keeping people from dying on the streets instead of writing more citations. Councillor Clark was recently quoted in the Register Guard stating, quote, "When we talk about creating a smoke-free downtown, it's not to create a healthy downtown. It's to stop some from being offended, and I don't think that's the job of the City Council." And I couldn't agree more.
Up next is Lorraine Hunt, followed by Art Bowman.
Hi, my name is Lorraine Hunt, and I, like somebody else here, haven't planned anything because I came on the spur of the moment today. I taught this morning for the very last time this year because I can't finish my job. I live in a neighborhood, and I told my supervisor like 2 hours ago, I live in a neighborhood where...
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Thank you. I live in a neighborhood, and so first of all, I want to invite anyone here to our home to see where we live and what the situation is. I think you will find that it's not livable, but I've done very well for a number of years. My husband can't be there anymore because there's no space for him to park, and so he lives somewhere else. We're still together as a family just like that. But The hardest part is the person in charge of affordable housing. It's next to affordable housing units where we have more than 100 neighbors. 4 years ago, we were told we couldn't park in front of our home. The spaces are feet away from our front door, and we're not to communicate with the neighbors in any way, shape, or form. Not to, don't communicate with them. So I struggled with that. I said, what do we do? My husband said, no, we were told we could park here. But I struggled with being respectful to a person who's giving us that directive. So I finally said, I'm going to show respect. And we've been respectful every single moment of the time we've lived there. We've never parked in anybody else's space or treated anybody with disrespect. But this last year, last summer, the crowning glory was when people from the affordable housing units came to smoke right under our windows and at our front porch. And our son, smoking is an issue, and I'm not going to deal with it, but he's he almost died we didn't think he would live, and friends thought he was going to pass away too, but we found an alternative treatment. At any rate, they came and smoked under his windows, and he went downhill, and finally we had to leave. I wrote 3 letters. It took 3 letters to change that. And in the process, and they were just letters saying, look, please take your smoking somewhere else. You're parking here, okay, but smoking somewhere else. And let's see, I lost my train of thought. So I want to say before my time is out that I'm inviting people. I have been struggling alone with this until today. Over the weekend, I could not get out of bed except for 1 2-hour period when I took my son to friends. He's housebound, almost housebound. And I saw affordable housing people having 2 and 3 cars of their families on the lot, and then multiple cars of friends, so 5 or 6 cars per unit. We don't have we have 1 little space in front of our garage, and that's it. No parking for a family, no parking for friends. Friends haven't been there for several years. So I invite you to my home, but when you come, please be respectful. All the Apple Orchard visitor-only signs, don't park there. We don't want to be disrespectful just because we're treated with disrespect. But please come and see the situation, see what you can do to help. Thank you.
Art Bowman is next, followed by Pam Liddell.
Art Bowman, First Ward. At this point, I'm sure you've always wished you could do that when I talk. Okay. At this point, I don't think that you can deny that there's been a long-standing effort to segregate downtown on the basis of class. The people doing this want poor people out, regardless of whether they live in houses or not. Since you're the legislative body, you might want to consider whether you are in fact segregationists, all of you, because I haven't seen any efforts to stop this. I've pointed out the humorous elements of it. You're the chief legislative body of a town where the cops tried to bust up James Joyce readings, and where they arrest people for reciting poetry in front of pizza parlors. There is a darker side of this. A few weeks ago, I managed to intercept a woman who had just gotten out of Lane County Jail. I saw her paperwork. She'd been arrested for disorderly conduct over by the Holt Center. She also had bruises all up and down her arms and was fairly banged up. She said she had received those bruises, quote, from the police or from jail. She has a history of mental health problems, so I'm not sure whether that's to give credence or not, but you do know that those things happen in jail. And you do know, and she was sent there despite the fact that she was housed and had obtained employment because she was poor, because she was identified as a street person. That happens all the time. Regardless of whether she was banged up in the jail, you know that people are assaulted in the jail. You know people are hurt in there. And you know that your inaction is allowing people to go there because of their socioeconomic status. Where is the decency in all this? Thank you.
Pam Liddell is next, followed by Zach Vishanoff.
Hi, I'm Pam Liddell. I live on East 23rd, and Betty Taylor is my rep. And I didn't really come prepared to talk tonight. I just wanted to plug into the city and start being part of the process so I can understand the South Willamette Street development rezoning. The first news I got of it was the bright yellow thing that comes with all the junk mail. Finally, hey, you can notice this. So at open house, I went to the open house, find out at the open house that my nice little street of primarily owner-occupied, 1,000 square foot or less, small, modest homes, we've all remodeled our kitchens and take care of our yards, is going to be rezoned for apartments and condos, throwing us all into psychological chaos. But anyway, my concern here, I don't know how much the city council overlaps with city planning or anything, but my concern here was the process, that the timeline between the open house and being able to digest the 83 pages of the rezoning rules and being able to have intelligent comments in by the deadline of June 2nd is a burden. I went, it was a holiday weekend too, but I went around the neighborhood to make sure everybody knew what was going on. There was only one other person that even knew this was happening. And it really hits us where we live. It's like, boy, do I improve my house now or do I let it go? Because suddenly my building isn't going to have value. It's just the land. Only a rich person will be able to buy it and put up an apartment or a condo. Once the zoning goes in, I won't be able to make an addition more than 30%. My plans and dreams can't happen. But anyway, my point here was mostly that the lack of citizen involvement so far. I don't know how much. My understanding was that our deadline was June 2nd to get our comments in, and then they would have deliberations. It looks like there's going to be a city council public hearing about it eventually. I just don't know how much more us people who are involved will be able to impact this now. It just seems like it was one open house, happened on a work day, starting at 4. I could only be there half an hour, and not enough time to understand anything or get anybody to talk to. So the whole process, I think, was a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to be suspicious of it, but I kind of wonder, Anyway, thanks for listening to me. I don't know what you can do.
Zach Vishnoff is next.
Either one?
Yep, either one.
Zachary Vishnoff. I feel sorry for the speaker before me. I think your efforts at densification of neighborhoods have been pretty abrupt, pretty secretive over the years. To Mike Clark's credit, I have heard that at the South Willamette related meetings, you were asking the tough questions and almost sending the meetings into kind of a quagmire. And I think that's really good, because those meetings are forced through without intending to avoid all the important details. The common thread behind a lot of your visions are these class projects. The U of O professor, the students who want to help the community, they get deployed into certain neighborhoods. That is something, I've only heard one city councilor, Jennifer Solomon, she used to say, you know what, some neighborhoods or some areas might not just be wanting to be offered up as a class project, like an experiment. That is a really troubling theme. I'm glad the thing at eWeb fell apart with the U of O Foundation. U of O Foundation has plenty on its plate. A failed riverfront research park is what they should focus on, maybe cleaning up some of the toxic waste there before they try to put condos along the river. But I want to talk to you briefly about the open meetings law. You've had some new meetings coming to shape, these U of O partners meetings. I saw just some photos today of the last meeting in September. This meeting is scheduled. Zach Galloway is one of your staff, and he gave me the date June 8th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the U of O Ford Alumni Center, Gastina Ballroom. these meetings should be on the city's website and in the Register Guard's meeting of city or list calendar of city meetings. There is no excuse for saying, oh, well, this is something special. It's COO partners. It's not a public meeting. We don't have all the city council there. So I would just urge you, June 8th, 5:30 to 7 p.m., put that on the city's normal calendar, and also give me information how I can get minutes from the last meeting. I think the mayor attended. Thank you very much.
I'm going to, got you in the queue. In the community forum, public forum part of our meeting, thank everybody for coming. Special thanks to Occupy Medical, and I will look into the Sharps container issue and see if we can get some help with that. Let's see. I wanted to also say if there are incidents of complaints about abuse within the public safety system, I encourage you to use the auditor process to try to get an eyeball into that. And in terms of Willamette Street zoning, I encourage you to talk to Robin here. Hands up. He can give you information, right? Okay. And Betty, you're next. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to ask, I want information about the Willamette Street zoning, and I made a call today to ask where I could find out something because I've had inquiries and I don't know what's going on there myself. And I want to thank everyone who came to speak. Nice to see Allie again. And I enjoy hearing everyone's views, whether I agree with them or not. Or whether I know anything about them or not. It's nice to learn something from all of you. I do want to say to the people who are against the smoking ban that from my point of view, it's not to tell people what they should do with their health. It's the health of the rest of us. And the litter that comes, the cigarette butts, which don't ever disintegrate, which are a danger to children and pets and people. And I haven't decided whether I'm for banning in parks and downtown streets. I don't know where people will go then. But it's not a matter of our telling, if we do pass something, it's not a matter of our telling people what they should do with their own health, but to protect the health of other people. As I said in a previous meeting, when I talked to a group of young people downtown who were smoking and asked them what they would think about banning smoking downtown, they thought it over, looked at each other and said, well, it might be a good idea because little children could pass by and breathe the smoke from our cigarettes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Brown. Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everyone, for coming down. As far as Susie Loopy's suggestion that we have the needle boxes in the park, I think it's a great idea, and it seems like it would be pretty easy to implement and virtually cost nothing, and yet I think there'd be a public health benefit, far beyond any trouble or expense to do that. So we should do that and pursue that. I want to thank Ali Valkyrie for her exposition of the reasons why poor people smoke. They mirrored a lot of my thoughts, but I wasn't able to articulate it quite as in detail and as completely as she did, and thank you for that. I believe that you're absolutely right what you said. I don't think it's necessarily to persecute homeless people and poor people. I do think that most people reason why they want to do it is a matter of not having to walk past big clusters of people, particularly at the bus station, and there's a couple other spots. And it's very obnoxious to people, and it's actually kind of dangerous for some people with respiratory problems. I really don't think that it's aimed at poor homeless people, but anyway, thank you for that. And Mrs. Hunt, if you would tell me your address after. I would like to, it was I had a hard time exactly understanding your problem, but if you don't have to say it out loud now, but if you give it to me after the meeting, I would like to cruise by and try to get a better idea of what the problem is. And I guess that's it.
Anybody else? All right, we'll move on to the next part of the meeting, which is the consent calendar. Council President?
Item,
Yes,
could I
Councilor
pull
Clark.
item B, please?
Pull item B.
Yes, please.
All right. Item B is pulled. We'll, I'm going to move the rest of,
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar with the exception of item B.
Second.
moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Councilor Zelenka?
Yes.
And none in opposition. It passes. Thank you. Item B, Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I notice on the tentative working agenda that we have goes through October and past council break this summer and on into late in the fall. And there are two issues I know we've talked about that have some timing importance that we don't want to drag out too long, but I don't see us coming back to deal with them, one being Envision Eugene, and the first part of that being the simple choice of the council, which I remember the manager saying and the staff saying that's going to be a council choice between A and B. And so I'm just wondering, when is that choice coming back to council? Because at the moment it doesn't show us until late in the fall, and that seems way too long a wait to me. Number two was the MUPD that I thought we were getting close to at least coalescing around or meeting maybe one more conversation with, and that's not on there either, and I'm wondering why.
Both of those are intended to be coming back to you before your break in August. The MUPD, more specifically, we would hope that you'll take action before your break so we don't have to go through another extension of the current situation. So that will be coming back to you. And then Envision Eugene will also be coming back to you. You might remember that the final forecast numbers out of Portland State are due at the end of June. We just think that would be it'd be nice to know what that number actually is before we come back to you for you to have your conversation.
I just didn't see it at all on the agenda anywhere, so I just wondered what.
Right, so they will be put on the agenda. They just aren't currently on the agenda. And they'll be before you get into your break.
Okay, thank you.
For MUPD, the next thing that you'll be doing is having a public hearing on the ordinance, and we're still in the process of trying to finalize the ordinance. Before we could set the public hearing date, we needed to know that the ordinance was finished because we have a certain notice requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, that's a topic I want to ask about. So I guess the idea was to have the public hearing and then have one or two more work sessions to tinker with whatever staff's final thing is, because I think we need a lot more discussion about, what is workforce housing. It's very basic. We need to, every town that has workforce housing ordinances, they're all different. They did it for the same reason. But depending on, the area median income of some towns are very wealthy, but their workers aren't. Others are more like here. We're kind of more in the middle. We're not dirt poor, but we're not, Beverly Hills. And so we need to have at least one work session where we talk about what does workforce housing mean. We still haven't really defined that for Eugene. And then we may even need one other meeting. And so I'm not sure we could get everything done in an hour and a half, but I've asked staff to provide materials for that, to direct it at that question, what is workforce housing, and some matrices, Eugene-specific matrices to develop so that the council can study them and decide, where we want to go on that. So, it'd be nice to know, when we plan to do that. And my question to the city attorney is, this is great, I was going to talk to you after the meeting anyway, is let's just say, and hopefully this won't happen, but let's just say that there were sticking problems that a majority of council decided, oh my gosh, we're going to go on break and we're not going to have it done. The suspension is lifted on September 1st, I believe. Is that true?
I don't remember the exact date, but it's September 1st, October 1st.
I think it was in September. And what my question is, let's just say the worst case scenario and we can't agree on a final thing. I think we'll be able to, but let's just say that we can't. We would have to have another public hearing to extend the suspension another month or two. Is that correct? Before we go on our break.
Yes.
Yes. So we could do that, and then is there a waiting period while it takes effect? I mean, it would take effect like 30 days after if we chose to do that.
Correct.
30 days
Unless
after.
6 of you voted in favor, and so it had an immediate effective date, there would be a waiting period of 30 days, but that's why we anticipated or we hoped that you would take action before your break, because that would be more than 30 days before
it would be.
The expiration.
Yeah, because we're going to be on break September. We're still on break September, at least a week into September.
Right.
Okay, I thank you for that. I think that answered my questions. Thanks.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Glenn, how much leeway is there after a public hearing is held to modify with MUPD? Is there I don't know how to ask this question very well. I'm wondering about the width of capacity to modify the ordinance after it's gone through the public hearing. Could we add an additional geographical component to the piece about to any of the particular elements of it after the fact without running afoul of our requirements with a public hearing?
It would depend on what the geographical component is. So if you decided, for example, and I can't remember what the neighborhoods are that are currently in the draft, but if you decided you wanted to add a geographical component that included a new neighborhood that's not yet mentioned in the ordinance, then you would need to have another public hearing because that neighborhood would never have had an opportunity to talk about should MUPD apply there. On the other hand, as an example, if you decided, we want to make someplace, the 2 blocks surrounding the atrium, which is, I think, all part of the downtown district, if we wanted to do something different just there that didn't involve something beyond MUPD, for example, the STC thing that we're putting in goes beyond MUPD. If it didn't go beyond MUPD and it was within an area that's already included in the draft so people had a chance to testify, we would not need another public hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Mayor. Along those same lines, one of the important points I believe is what's the proper percentage of area median income to address the workforce housing problem. And as it reads now, it's the AMI, which would mean 100%. And let's assume that council, after the public hearing, decided to lower that a little bit. Would that require another public hearing?
No, because as long as you're dealing with something that the public had an opportunity to comment about, and the public may comment about that, you're just responding to either additional information you've received or additional information that the public provided you. The key is it something entirely new that the public never would have had an opportunity to comment about?
This won't be new. There will be public discussion before. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
So I just want to encourage MUPD and several other issues, as I sent you an email earlier today, are issues that concern every counselor. And so I just really encourage everybody to really try to free up their calendar so that we can get through these things, because we have a lot of various counselors missing for various meetings, and it's hard to get through these and be inclusive of everybody. And I think we want to be inclusive of everybody. So do your best with that. Okay, we're going to vote on item B. All those in favor, please indicate.
Do I need to make a motion?
Yeah, no, it's already on the table. Okay, and Councilor Zelenka?
Yes.
So that's 6 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. Thank you. And now we're going to go on to our action item of the evening, and that's the Central Lane Scenario Planning. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. And through this action item, the council is asked to select the preferred scenario resulting from the Central Lane Scenario Planning Project. This project was initiated by the state legislature in 2009 and requires the Central Lane Metropolitan Planning Organization to cooperatively select a hypothetical scenario for how the region could reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light vehicles. The preferred scenario you're being asked to select has been proposed by the MPO jurisdictions to fulfill this requirement and was reviewed by the council in March of this year. The Springfield and Coburg City Councils have already taken action to select the scenario, and the Lane County Board of Commissioners is expected to take action by June 16th. By selecting the preferred scenario, the council would be fulfilling Eugene's obligation regarding the Central Lane Scenario Planning Project, and the action is timely as the project team is required to report back to the state before the end of the 2015 legislative session.
So, City Manager, is Robin here to answer questions about that? Or
Yes, he's available to answer questions if you have
So,
any.
Robin, would you mind just kind of taking a very brief synopsis of the options there?
The options before you today, essentially, select the scenario or not. Pretty simple. Some of the other jurisdictions have had a couple of small tweaks to the language, nothing that substantively changed the scenario at all. Just around additional comfort level with saying, no, this is not anything that the jurisdictions are required to implement. I believe another one was that the various jurisdictions would have the ability to select from among the options that were put forward in the preferred scenario. And I think there was a concern. There was a concern about some of the graphics that were in there. There was some images that just.
But overall, for the folks who are listening and don't know what the heck we're talking about,
okay.
I'm just. This has been an opportunity to look at different sort of levers of what we could try to do to reduce our carbon emissions. And
Yes, correct. If you'd like just a little more background on overall what's going on here, sure. Essentially, the state legislature in 2009 passed a bill that asked our region to take a look at a series of what-if scenarios for how our region could reduce greenhouse gas emissions for light vehicles. They said, work together on this. There's a lot of different ways you could potentially do this. We'd like you to identify a hypothetical way that you think would work best for your region. And essentially, they said, this is an exploratory project. We're not going to require the region to actually implement it, but the state needs to get a better understanding of what it would take to do this. If the region were to pursue that type of action. So that's been going on for quite some time. Quite a number of meetings between representatives of the various jurisdictions to look at a whole variety of different options and compare those against one another, and also evaluate the impacts of what those different options would be against the qualities of the triple bottom line, so economic prosperity, social equity, and environmental health.
Right. And when you look at those options, some got you more, some got you less, some were in between, right?
Yeah.
But they were all ways that we could choose and we could learn from to address the issues that we're trying to address with our own climate and energy plan.
Yes, that's correct. And another important outcome of the project was to help the region develop some analysis tools that we can use going forward for whatever purposes council or other members of the region would like. To understand the impacts of the different policy choices that you might have before you.
And I guess the only other thing I would say about that is we know that we have a climate and energy plan, but it's for us, and we live, and our emissions don't end at the city limits. So this is an effort for us to look across jurisdictions at what kind of levers can get us what kinds of results.
Correct.
Right. So let's put this on the table and see if anybody has any questions or anything.
I move to select the Central Lane Scenario Planning preferred scenario provided in Attachment A.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions? Councillor Clark.
I'll vote in favor of this because of the fact that because of its nature. But I want to say that I think we're doing a lot of work to talk about what happens if and how do we affect if, and we're not doing enough to plan for what will we do when. I believe that there are a number of things we know will happen, and we have more work to do to address the issue of what happens when. And I think our focus should begin to shift at some point, so I wanted to say that.
Councillor Clark, what I would say to that is you're totally right. This is about how you try to reduce the impact that you have now, and these are some options to do that. But you're also correct that almost anybody who is working on the climate issue right now is talking about both things. Is talking about how you reduce and then how you deal with the impacts that are going to occur in any case, and we need to be able to work on those things. So both things are very, very important. Okay, ready to vote on this? All those in favor, please indicate.
Mayor, can I get in the queue, please?
Yep, hold the vote. Councillor Zelenka.
Yeah, I, for one, haven't given up on our ability to actually mitigate for climate change. I think we're actually a species that wants to survive, and we will do what we need to. And hopefully we won't find that it's not cost-effective to save ourselves, but stranger things have happened. A couple of points on the plan. Sorry for my hoarse voice. A couple of points on the plan. One is on one of the pages on the scenario, planning document that we received. It went through all of the benefits that are associated with this plan that aren't related to greenhouse gas impact, greenhouse gases at all, or climate change, in that we get a significantly lower reduction in air pollutants. We get a 37% reduction in our time spent in congestion, meaning we stay static with this plan as opposed to having it increase 37%, meaning times in our car sitting in traffic. We get a reduction in the miles driven, and we get the most stunning of all of them is the increase in healthcare savings that are associated with this plan. $9 million associated with the business as usual case, and $31 million, almost more than three times as much, associated with this plan in terms of savings for our local community. And then finally, change in our premature mortality goes down pretty dramatically as well. And on top of all of that, we get greenhouse gas reductions. So this plan makes sense on so many levels that it is interesting to actually note them all in this plan, and I applaud the staff work that was done to do that. The second point I'd make is that this plan actually creates the blueprint for our actions and our budget that we will be doing over the next decade or so in terms of the actions that we need to take in our transportation, and especially in our transportation sector, which is where most of our greenhouse gases come from, but also the blueprint for the spending that needs to occur. One of the significant points that was made in the report is that we're not even close to being able to spend. Our current spending isn't even close to being able to implement this plan. We need to redirect monies towards the things that are in this plan and make sure that they're happening to achieve all these benefits. If we don't and we do business as usual, that's just not good enough and it's not cost effective. So I applaud the plan and I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we're ready to vote on it. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Councilor Zelenka?
Yes.
6 in favor and none in opposition. Thank you all, and that is the end of our work for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.